Sadler, the commentary editor at the Washington Times, and this is Politically Unstable. Today, I am joined by David Engelhardt, who was Charlie Kirk's pastor. He's also a board member at Turning Point USA. He's very active in evangelicizing our youth, as well as getting our youth involved on campuses and in Charlie's movement. He also wrote a column for us entitled "The Victory After Charlie Kirk's Death." David, thank you for joining me. The title of your piece, "The Victory After Charlie Kirk's Death," it's really hard for many of us to see any victory coming out of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. His life was taken away from him only at 32 years of age, leaving behind his wife, Erica, 2 young kids. He had such a bright future. So how do you find victory after his death?
Well, first, thank you for having me on, Kelly. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. And I always just say, for those who want to support, they can support TPUSA to support Erica and Charlie's movement and all of the stuff we're doing at TPUSA.com. And I was one of Charlie's pastors. His main pastor is a guy, Rob McCoy, but I was one of the 5 pastors around him. That's actually why Charlie he kind of got so lit on fire in the 2020 world, because he saw all these churches shutting down, and he's like, what are you guys doing? So he surrounded himself by a bunch of rebels like myself that were fighting the system. And then there was an incredible thing that happened, and our churches that stood up. And isn't it always the case in Christianity that darkness comes and, it's the 3 days in the tomb, and then resurrection comes thereafter and everything changes? That's axiomatically the center of Christianity. That's what the picture of the cross is. Our primary symbol is from death to life. And so there's so much to say about what is happening and what happened with Charlie's life. I think one of the primary things is, when we see this resurgence and response back to Christianity from his life, it means his life had such a significant Christian impact. And as you know, Kelly, we deal with pundits and talk to pundits and politicians, all this kind of stuff. They're not all Christians. Like, they all say, God bless America, but they don't all have a genuine faith that when their absence is here, everybody's talking about their faith. And that's really a profound thing. And because he lived so connected to his faith and so committed to God and his Savior, Jesus Christ, and all of those kind of things, that his absence meant, oh my gosh, I'm missing this guy that was a voice that helped me understand Christianity, and it finally was making sense, and his mastery of apologetics and the explosion of, I was listening to Rogan and Ian Carroll Smith last night, and Ian was talking about he'd never really listened to Charlie, and then he just binged hours and hours and hours and hours. I love that, because Charlie was talking about truth, virtue, beauty, God, Jesus, all of this stuff that can save America.
Now, you were invited to Charlie's Medal of Freedom Award that he was given by President Trump at the White House. Erica attended, gave some beautiful remarks. I think she's one of the great orators of our time and of our generation, not of my generation, of a younger generation. Can you tell us what that day was like when you heard the news of his assassination, and kind of walk me through the honor that President Trump bestowed on Charlie Kirk?
Yeah, so that timeline, is a handful of weeks, but my wife and I were on our 20th wedding anniversary in Rome, and I had a text from our COO that there was an emergency, and within probably 5 minutes, I was bombarded with text messages and seeing, the graphic imagery and the incredible kind of shock to your system when you see your friend bleed out in front of the world. I heard a report of a Navy SEAL operator. This is a guy who sees action. And he said, I've seen people die, I've been in war, and this is about one of the most brutal things I've ever seen, even from the camera. And so, it was so incredibly horrible and shocking and graphic, and the concussion went around the whole world. We're in Rome. I'm seeing in the papers the next day, like, it's everywhere. And then, it's a moment of darkness. It's days of darkness, and you're kind of half crying and for days and days. And I was on my mutual friend's show. You probably know David Harris Jr., but as soon as I showed up on his show, he just started weeping as soon as my face appeared on the video. We were doing one of these. That's how shocking it is. But then after, the aftermath and seeing the momentum of people come to Christ and churches get filled, and our church in New York City, King's Church, New York City, is up 50% in attendance. We just see such an incredible resurgence of people wanting to be connected to God, wanting to know God. And then culminating really at the White House, Kelly, it was like this moment it was a dark, gross, dreary Washington, D.C. day and cold and not fun. And then that day, the day when it happened, I brought my sunglasses just because I was like, I wonder if it's going to get sunny this afternoon. I just had a feeling it was. By the time we got to the White House, the sun was breaking through the clouds. And even President Trump in his remark, he was like, look at this day. It's the most beautiful day of all time. The whole that whole thing was so fun that he was recognizing, we were all recognizing there's something divine about this. There's something really special. It feels like heaven is watching. And it was, obviously. But, there's like this breakthrough moment that's happening, not just related to Charlie's life, but what Charlie was standing for, which is the restoration of our United States of America and the hope of freedom and God's ideas, liberating the world from the shackles of socialism and wokeness and Marxism and all the other isms that plague our time right now. And so I just was like kind of mesmerized by the beauty of it all. And as you know, I mentioned in the article, my wife Bethany was standing next to me, and she was like, why is the playlist so bad? Because it was a really weird playlist. And like Dancing Queen is on.
Dancing Queen,
ABBA. I'm like, why is Dancing Queen on? Because it's kind of it's a memorial service, Mm-hmm. And then the admin gal who works at the White House turned and whispered to my wife, it's the president. He's running the playlist from the West Wing right now on his iPad. And it just made it kind of fun and beautiful. And it reminded me of the resurrection, what it is and what it means. And that hope does come after tragedy. And it doesn't mean there's not going to be pain the whole time, like in remembrance of it. But it also doesn't mean that there can't be incredible hope. And when I see certain pundits out there, Kelly, like it feels like they're fueled with secular rage. And there's a couple of them that I won't mention because I'll be nice right now, that are like on the Charlie thing. And they're like, we have to kill the Democrats and we have to kill the left and all this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And we have to defeat, and they're the enemies. And, from my perspective as a Christian, we battle not against flesh and blood. And so it's really ideas, spiritual forces that primarily manifest in ideas that trap these people, that say, well, it's not a life until it's out of the womb and kind of has a job. It's not a life until it's like, that's a bad idea. That's a demonic idea that has entrapped somebody's mind. So instead of the Christian Imago Dei version where we say, no, all life has this God stamp on it. Therefore it's all human life is valuable. They have a bondage of the mind. And so I'm very wary of that spirit right now, because there is a left and a right spectrum. Mm-hmm. There is the Hitlerian, side of the spectrum, and then the opposite side, the socialist tyranny. Anyway, so I want to be a Christian, and so that means there's hope and redemption and Dancing Queen and all of those hilarious things that are allowed to come as well. And it's been incredible, as you said, to watch Erica Kirk respond. I talked to her 2 nights ago for a while, and she's just doing incredible. I mean, it really is a divine, supernatural grace on her to lead right now in charge. And she's, not everybody knows, she's brilliant, and she's a master chess player. And Turning Point's going to rock in the coming years. It does already, but it's going to continue to.
Well, we've already seen so many new chapters spring up, kids wanting to get involved if a school doesn't have a chapter, wanting to bring a chapter to it, exponentially kind of explode after his death. And then there's what others have been deeming as a Charlie Kirk effect. Just this week in the Wall Street Journal, it reported Bible sales are surging, and they put it in connection with Charlie Kirk's death. I know that I went to services after Charlie was assassinated, immediately after on Sunday, and my pastor recognized Charlie Kirk, and and what he's had in terms of recruiting and building younger kids, getting them to come to church, not just watch it online, which a lot of people do, or watch it on TV, but actually come and get involved in the community, which is really what it's all about. I know that you just said that your church services have been growing by 13% after his death. What do you see the future holding, and where this younger generation is going, and what Charlie started? Eric is going to be taking it over, but I mean, what do you think the future holds?
Yeah, my favorite question is, how do we save the world? I like that. I like that question, and I think it needs to be asked. And I think the Bible actually answers it pretty sufficiently. And in Malachi chapter 4, it's like the closing last book on the Old Testament before Christ comes and kind of changes the universe. It says, if the hearts of the fathers will turn towards the sons, and then the sons towards the fathers, I will lift the curse off the land. This is one of the reasons Charlie was like upset about the civil rights policy, not equal standing under the law, but actually the policy that in the Black communities, it went from a 75% rate of fathers to a 25% rate of fathers, in the 15 years after the civil rights policy. That means there were bad elements of that policy that were enacted that incentivized fatherlessness. And that Thomas Sowell, all the Thomas Sowell stuff that we all know on our side of the aisle. But so what I see Turning Point saying, okay, we're going to turn our hearts towards the 100,000 or million Charlie Kirks that are up and coming, and invest in and develop and train and teach. And that can actually lift the land off the curse off the land if the hearts of the fathers are directed towards lifting up, raising, strengthening, and giving opportunities to all of those things to young people so they can run their race. There's something about 30 to 50 years old, that age range where you run really, really hard. And oftentimes I've seen in evangelicalism or just out there, like, people want to sit on the throne forever and ever and ever and ever. And I think that's narcissistic. I think a good father lifts his son up. And I think that's the strategy of the organization moving forward, is from Charlie, who built this incredible organization, to a million Charlies, 100,000. And all the team has been resonating with that same kind of idea set, that's really the answer to move forward.
What do you say? We just experienced the No Kings protests over the weekend, protesting the Trump administration. Some of the demonstrators, some of the protesters had harsh things to say about Charlie Kirk, calling him a racist, misogynist, celebrating his death. What do you say to those people who saw Charlie as a divisive figure?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenging thing because people live in echo chambers, as you well know. Ezra, whatever his name is, Levant, wrote a book about it. Like, the whole thing is an echo chamber system. Somebody before that wrote a book called The Epistemological Crisis, and his idea was the same. It's like, we're getting all of our knowledge from two different places, and so when we come to try to have a conversation, we have this fundamental blockade. So, Jesus said to his disciples, if you obey my commandments, then you will know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And so it's about like doing and hearing and freedom. And hearing is essential to freedom. And so we really do actually have to get out of the echo chamber and be brave enough this is Benjamin Franklin 101. He's like, you should listen to other people's counter arguments against you because they might be right, or it may strengthen your position. One of the two things are going to happen. I think he wrote that in his autobiography. And so it's like actually investigate. If somebody's a villain, investigate the villainy. If somebody's a hero, substantiate that. And so everyone that I've talked to that has those perspectives are people that never really listened to Charlie. And he was, especially towards the end of his life, he was so gracious in responding to the opposing side. I think it's pretty disarming if you spend time listening.
Exactly right. Go to the original source material. There is so much out there of it, of him being videotaped at these college campuses, telling those who disagreed with him most vehemently to get up to the front of the line, right, and to prove him wrong. David, before we go, can you share with us one of your favorite memories of Charlie, or an experience that you had with him?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with Charlie, especially after I met him. I was with him 2 trips a month. We'd be traveling to universities or talking about God stuff and apologetics and philosophy and Aristotle and all of these things that he loved and was very interested in. I think one of my favorite memories, we were at Hillsdale together with Dr. Larry Arnn, and we were sitting in the back of this Aristotle class, and Charlie just had the biggest smirk on his face, and he kept turning and winking at me because I don't know if you know who Larry Arnn is, but he kept saying these most profound things, and I just loved the depth of Charlie's inquisitiveness. Like, it was fulfilling and life-giving to him and was joyful. He would be bubbling with joy over those kind of seeking out the deep things. And there is something deeply fulfilling and, substantial if you would, like Charlie, this is Socrates quote, like, inquire, like, go look for the deep things, stop the TikTok crazy, doom scrolling that you and we all do, and look for the deep things and be fulfilled for the deep things. That would be like, Paul says to Timothy, follow me like I follow Christ. And I've been saying to young people, follow Charlie like Charlie followed Christ. He's a great example of a Christian in our time.
Well, I know that on Friday evenings, he powered all of his devices down. That was the quiet time for him and his wife and his children, just to reflect on life and to be thankful for everything that God has provided. I think a lot of us get too addicted to our devices, to the death scrolling, and just don't take time to enjoy the present and give thanks for everything that we have.
That's, what's funny about that is that when I met Charlie in 2018, 1820, sorry, he was burnt out. He was tons of pain in his body, burnt out. And I was the one who said to him, Charlie, like, you have to take a 24-hour Sabbath. And he's so much more disciplined. I do it like once a month. He was just immediately every single Saturday, shut it down. And now his book is December. It's called Stop in the Name of God, something how the Sabbath will bless your life. That's coming up this December, and very excited for that to be part of his final legacy, that people would start incorporating those practices back in their life.
Well, David Engelhardt, thank you so much for joining us today on Politically Unstable. We really appreciate your thoughts, your memories, and of course, the great commentary piece that has been published at the Washington Times. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Kelly.